Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited about today's guest, River Nice. They are here and queer and here to help the LGBTQIA community and their allies with their financial woes. You're not going to want to miss out on these excellent financial tips and how to prioritize your finances in your life.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I am 28 years old. I am queer. I am non-binary and transgender, and I own a financial planning firm that I
Okay.
run out of my apartment.
Okay. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your financial firm?
Sure. So I decided to become a financial planner a few years ago because I had been working in tech and realized that I did not care enough about building websites for that to be what I did with my life. So at the time, I uh, was dating somebody who was in a lot of credit card debt. So because she had this credit card debt from her gender transition, she was just really stressed out about it all the time and was worried that her whole life was going to be about this debt. And I'm a numbers guy. So I sat
Mhm.
down and just made a spreadsheet and showed her a plan that she could just follow to get out of debt in a few years. And
Mhm.
she was like, "This is incredible. You have to do this for other trans and queer and other LGBTQIA people." I said, "Wow." So I got a job doing that corporate for a little while and then needed
Mhm.
to leave corporate. And so I started my own firm last year. And that's exactly what I do is financial planning for the queer and trans community, um,
Okay.
helping folks who maybe are just getting started with their financial
Mhm.
lives or are suddenly making more money than they did before and don't know what to do with it, or trying to get out of debt, which is most people trying to get out of debt.
Okay. Yeah, very much. And it's not just limited to any one specific group or another. So definitely very important. But you'll have that extra special touch as well when you're addressing those clients. So that's great.
That's exactly.
So how did you become so knowledgeable in so all things financial?
Yeah. I grew up, my dad was a CPA and he ran his
Hmm.
accounting practice out of our house. So,
Okay.
not that I necessarily had a formal education, but I was just surrounded by this all the time. So,
Hmm.
just like some
Hmm.
general financial know how and then just business owner know how and just what it's like to run a business. Because when I came home from school, dad's in a meeting with a client, like
Yep.
it's just part of my life. Um, so I had just kind of like a little bit of a head start, I think, from other people. Just my dad on the dinner table being like, "This is how income tax actually works versus what people think is happening." like,
Yeah.
uh, so I had that foundation, and then I didn't have any other real like education in finance until I got a
Hmm.
corporate job.
Okay.
And through that corporate job, they paid for me to take a couple of exams that I needed and do like the online prep course for the exams. And so that's what
Hmm.
kind of caught me up on the other things that I needed to know.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. And what services do you offer your clients?
Yeah, my main service is kind of like I said before, it's for folks who are just getting started
Yeah.
and maybe
Hmm.
making more money than they've ever made before. Uh,
Hmm.
and the service is to work together for 6 months on what I consider to be foundational financial planning topics. So
Hmm.
we kind of go through like first getting everything organized because some people don't even know like what their passwords are to their online accounts, let
Yeah.
alone what everything is. So first
Wow.
then we analyze cash flow. So where does your money come in and where does it go out?
Right. Yeah.
Because so much of the world that we live in has
Hmm.
us like not noticing when we spend money or how much we spend.
Right.
So becoming more aware by actually looking at each transaction we've made recently to just start to retrain our brains into what's actually
Hmm.
happening. We use that
Okay.
information to create kind of a budget, which in my opinion is more about like a list of habits we want to shift, if you will.
Hmm.
Like instead of spending money here, I'd rather spend it here. Um,
Yep.
and instead of spending money here, I'd rather pay the debt or save for a vacation or save for the down payment of a house. And so we make
Hmm.
a budget based on that. But again, budget is more about what habits do you want to be
Exactly.
using instead of what habits you have been using. Um, looking at, credit score analysis, so looking at the
Hmm.
credit score and the credit report and if there's any room for improvement there. and working with
Okay.
benefits
Yeah.
analysis, making sure that my clients actually understand the benefits that their job is offering them and that they're taking best advantage of them.
Right.
So
Wow.
those are kind of the categories of the foundational stuff that I work on
Hmm.
with most clients. And again, that's over a 6-month period of meeting over Zoom and working through the things to make sure that folks have the knowledge and advice that they
Hmm.
need to be empowered for the rest of their financial lives.
Wow, that's awesome. So it's a lot like a lot of what my other guests have spoke about. So this isn't just financial planning and creating a budget for you, but it's also empowerment and mindset and changing the way and shifting what you're thinking. I did a little snooping on your social media, and I saw that you said that many folks' expenses are misaligned to their values, and so this goes back to that. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that so there's more insight there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I see among my clients, my friends, my parents, like everyone,
Hmm.
is that
Yep.
we have a culture that advertisers are really good at advertising, marketers are really good at
Hmm.
marketing, and technology providers are really good at making it easier for us to spend money without thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, here I live in Philadelphia. So, a big expense that I see for a lot of folks is ride shares, so Uber and
Hmm.
Lyft. And the technology is so good and so easy that you spend however much you're spending for your ride without actually thinking about what it's going to cost you or without thinking about how many rides you've taken this month and how that adds up to how much you
Wow.
spent this month.
Yeah.
So it's just we're just on this
Yeah.
autopilot of spending money because it's the thing to do because it's the habit that we have. And
Hmm.
when we sit down and see this is how much I spent on Uber this month versus this is how much I donated to my favorite organization, like
Hmm.
that might not be in alignment with what you actually want to be prioritizing in your life.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I never want to judge somebody and I never want people to judge themselves for the things that they've done in
Right.
the past. I just want to bring that awareness of what are you
Right.
actually prioritizing with your money and is it the thing that you want to prioritize with your money?
Uh-huh.
Would you rather take the bus a few more times so that you can donate a few more dollars to whatever organization is important to you? Or not even donate. If you would rather save some money each month to go on a dream vacation 3 years from now, maybe
Mhm.
that's a higher priority to you than being able to eat out a few more times this month, whatever it
Wow.
is.
Wow, that's amazing. So that really hits at home, right? Because we're also used to just that tap and go. It's everything's at your fingertips. You don't think twice about it. Your card's already connected to it. You know there's enough money in the account to spend, those few bucks, but you never really think twice. And so, back in the old days when our grandparents more so even than our parents were balancing checkbooks, we don't have that anymore. There's
Exactly.
none of that. There's none of that concept of understanding, okay, this much came out, so we only really have this much. You're not as mindful anymore of the things you're spending it on, and those little bits add up. We've my husband and I have sat there and tried to arrange what we eat, like what we spend in eating out, and just the cost is astronomical. I'm like, we can have a really nice car if we would stop eating out so much, and just cook and put the effort in to cook, even if it's something very simple, a simple meal. But if we just continue eating out the way we are, we could have lived like kings without that eating out stuff. So for sure.
And it's yeah, and again, it's just about your priorities. If your
Right.
priority is to eat out well and you don't care how nice your house or car is, then great. Make
Mhm.
sure that that's what you're doing with your money. But if your priority is to have the nice car or the reliable car that's going to get you places, then make sure that's what your money's going toward.
Yeah, and I love that you put it like that. It's really about priority. Maybe for some, that's what they want to do, and so, if you're a foodie, then great, that's good.
Right.
But you'll have to suffer or sacrifice a little bit in different areas of your life. So that's really great advice. Thank you so much. So, how do you feel? What advice do you have for someone who has astronomical debt? So somebody's coming to you, not necessarily in the beginning stages like you'd mentioned earlier, but now they're coming to you and saying, I realize I have a problem and I have this much debt sitting aside. Just people calling me and knocking on my door and sending me hate mail, basically. What advice and how do you help give them direction to go from there?
Yeah. The first thing that I do is actually look at the credit report. So,
Mm.
here in the United States, when you have debt of any kind, it is usually put onto your credit report, and that factors into what your credit score is. And then the credit
Mhm.
score affects what you're able to do about debt moving forward.
Okay.
So, if somebody has a lot of debt, I want to see what are the options to make that debt less harmful. And so that
Hmm.
starts with looking at the credit score. What's impacting your credit score, and what can we do to make that credit score high enough that you have more options for how to manage your debt.
Hmm.
So, annualcreditreport.com is the website that we can pull a credit report into for free once every 12 months. And the
Okay.
federal US government mandates that we can do that. And actually right now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the CARES Act changed the rules so that we can pull our credit reports every week, not every year. So now it's actually a really good time for folks to jump on it and learn what's in their credit report and see what they can do to improve their credit situation to then improve their debt situation.
Wow.
So I bring folks to annualcreditreport.com. We pull all 3 credit reports because there's one for each bureau. We look at the information on it and we see what are the actual debts listed there. Because if there's some collections agency calling you and saying you owe us this money, but it's not in your credit report, I am way less concerned about that debt because it's not hurting your credit score, so it's not affecting your future as much. You still might have to pay it back. It still could show up on your credit report later, but it's not my number one priority if it's not on that report. So I look at what are the debts on the report and I look, are there any negative marks? So that would be like missed payments, in default, in collections, stuff like that. And I look at, is there any opportunity to improve that negative mark or prevent it from continuing to be negative? Once we kind of look through that, maybe it's we need to get the student loan out of default. And so you need to set up rehabilitation. Like there's all different things depending on what the situation is. Maybe it's just there's something in collections. And so you call the collections agency and negotiate to pay them less than what they're saying you owe them. But if you can get them to agree that that's the amount you're going to compromise on, that's good. But once we do what we can to get the credit score as high as we can, then we can look at refinancing options. So if the debt that you have is really high interest, so a private student loan that's high interest or a credit card that's charging you like 20% interest, we want to look at what are ways that we can move that debt somewhere else at a lower interest rate so that it's not growing as quickly so that you're able to actually pay it down. So if the credit score is high enough and you have credit card debt, then we can look at taking out a new credit card that either has an intro 0% interest rate or just a lower interest rate overall and will allow for balance transfers. We take out the new credit card and do a balance transfer to move the debt over. And now hopefully it'll be more manageable to pay down.
Oh, okay.
With student loans, similarly, especially private student loans, high interest rate, we could look at taking out a new student loan to refinance the existing student loan at a lower interest rate. And other types of debt, there's always there's usually a refinancing option. When it comes to federal student loans, usually refinancing is not the best option because you want to make sure that they stay federal student loans, and there's all kinds of income-based repayment programs and student loan forgiveness and things that you can do that you don't want to lose. But also federal student loans are much more willing to, if you call them up and say, I'm in a hardship, I can't pay this right now, or whatever the situation is, they're more willing to work with you than private student loans in most cases. So those are kind of the initial steps. Once we have done everything we can to make the debt the least harmful as possible, so that would mean lowest interest rate possible, then we make a plan for what you're going to pay each month. So here's where you need a budget for what you spend in a month and what you're going to spend on and how much each thing is important to you. You know, if paying your rent or your mortgage is the highest priority, then make sure that's happening. If putting yourself and your family is the next highest priority, go through it. And then figure out what is my wiggle room? How much can I put toward this debt without sacrificing my living experience too much, my quality of life too much?
Exactly.
So, maybe I'll give up the Hulu account, but keep the Netflix account. Maybe I'll give up the Ubers, but I'll keep the buying takeout, whatever it is, and figure out what's the total amount that you can put toward debt. Then you make the list of all the debts and what are the minimum payments for each. I really like setting up auto pay so that I don't have to be stressed about it every day. I know that it's happening in the background, especially if you have regular enough income to feel like you know how much is coming in and going out on a recurring basis. I set up auto pay for the minimum payments for most of the accounts, and I pick the one debt that I'm going to pay down the most aggressively. And so then I take however much I set aside for the debt, subtract the minimum payments that I'm putting toward everything else, and whatever's left over for that monthly that I'm willing to put toward it is what I put toward that account that I'm going to aggressively pay down first.
Oh, okay.
And so I try to set up auto pay for that one as well. If it's $100 or whatever, I set up auto pay, just pull $100 until it's gone. And then I take however much I was putting towards that and put it toward the next one. So that's the snowball effect, right? You just keep growing how much that monthly payment is going to be based on how many debts you've been able to get rid of.
Okay. And meanwhile, not spending any more debt.
Right. And that's the trick. And that's why I say, make sure you look at your budget and make sure you're not sacrificing your quality of life too much. Because if you know yourself and you know you're going to keep ordering the Uber or ordering food or whatever it is, like, don't
Mm-hmm.
pretend that you're not going to do that, because that's how you get yourself into more debt later. Like,
Mm-hmm.
be realistic about what you know you're going to spend and what you know you will actually put toward the debt.
Yeah.
And make sure you have a little bit set aside for emergencies, because the best prevention into more debt, the best way to prevent more debt is to have some savings for emergencies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So speaking of savings, would you ever advise to maybe lower the amount of contribution you have to your investments, like your 401k or 403b or anything like that, in order to pay off these debts so that you have better debt for the long run? Or like, how would you address those types of questions?
It's definitely worth considering.
Okay.
I have to look at somebody's full financial situation before I advise them to do anything like that, but it's definitely worth considering. So when somebody is contributing to a 401k, 403b, whatever it is, for their retirement savings account, I check, is your employer matching to a certain percentage of what you put in? And
Right.
so try to contribute at least that amount, so that you're not leaving money on the table, so that your employer is giving you the full match of what's
Mm-hmm.
going into that account.
Okay.
Once you have that, if you're able to contribute more, great. But if we're comparing whether to contribute more to the retirement savings or whether to contribute more to the debt, you
Yeah.
want to consider a few things in that trade-off. So one of the things is, how much interest is the debt costing you? If you're trying to pay off a credit card that's charging you 20% interest each month, I would focus on that, because that 20% that you're losing of whatever the balance is very high compared to what you're likely to earn on your investment.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a public student loan at 3% interest, I would probably not prioritize it, because that 3% interest is charging you, unless you have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. That 3% is probably not very much.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about whether the money is going to grow in the investment at whatever rate we expect the market to grow,
Right.
versus how much you're definitely losing in the debt, that's kind of a trade-off that we want to consider. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Looking at, definitely, especially with the market right now and how things are going with the pandemic, being able to see where are you really gaining or are you losing? Because I know when I looked at my 403b, I was a little shell shocked by, and everybody says, don't look at that. It's just paper money right now. It's just going through some things, but it'll go back up. But honestly, if I looked at that and I saw the drop in value and everything, just not a fan. So
Yeah, it's really emotional, right? Everything
it
about
is.
money is so emotional. And it's so
Yes.
interesting to me that we try to pretend that it's not. We try to pretend it's just hard
Right.
numbers. But it's
Uh-huh.
really so emotional to talk about money, because it's our lives, right? Like, that retirement account is my future. So to see it go down is really upsetting. And I
Mhm.
totally get that. But
It
for
is.
young folks like us, we have the privilege of just waiting it out, The stock market
Exactly.
has historically grown over time if you give it enough time. And so,
Uh-huh.
because we're not trying to retire in the next couple of years, hopefully, I'm assuming that about you, but I'm not trying to retire in the next couple of years,
Right.
we have the time for it to grow again.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That's really great information. So I do want to touch on the a little bit about your background and why the direction that you went in with your financial firm. So would you like to share that?
Yeah, sure. Um, so, like I said, I chose to become a financial planner specifically for the LGBTQIA community, because I think that we are underserved in this area. Um, in general, as a trans person especially, but even as a queer person before I came out as trans,
Mm-hmm.
finding professionals that I wanted to work with, that I felt like could understand some of the foundational aspects of my identity and my life, is
Yeah.
really hard.
Uh-huh.
Even finding like a doctor who won't just assume that I am at risk of pregnancy, or assume, like,
Uh-huh.
there's just little
Yeah, yeah.
assumptions that people make that you're straight and cisgender. Um,
Uh-huh.
so it's true of any professionals. And then when I found that financial planning is something that I'm good at, and I looked around at other financial planners that exist in this country, I
Uh-huh.
I found a few, but not a ton of people who were like, yes, I am a member of the LGBTQIA community, or I serve the LGBTQIA community, or
Mhm.
I understand that transgender people exist, and that the name that you go by might be different than the name on your driver's license, or you
Right.
might use pronouns that are different than he or she, and then like how to use those pronouns correctly. Like, there's just so
Exactly.
many levels of cultural competency in how to
Yeah.
respectfully talk to someone.
Okay.
And like you and I were just talking about, money is so emotional, right? Like it's so
Right.
vulnerable to talk about your money. So
Right.
being able to open up about money to somebody who already doesn't understand your identity or your life is really challenging.
It is. It is.
So
Okay.
I just saw such a need for it. And it has shown in the year and change since I started the business, there's definitely a huge need for it.
Okay. Now, say there are individuals out there who just right now, for them, being able to utilize your resources is not even um, a thought for them just because of their financial status at the time. Are there any resources out there that you would love to maybe redirect them and to say, check this place, check this website, and take a look at this information? What are some resources that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Here in Philadelphia, there is a nonprofit called Clarify,
Okay.
spelled CLARIFI.
Okay.
Um, and Clarify is a financial literacy nonprofit based in Philadelphia,
Mhm.
that is a great resource for folks who cannot afford an actual financial planner but need help with things like budgeting and making a plan for debt or buying a house for the first time, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So they offer classes and boot camps. I'm pretty sure they've moved things online now since
Yeah.
everything. Um, but I think that there are other similar financial literacy nonprofits in other major cities around the US, but
Mhm.
that's the one that I'm aware of since this is where I live.
Okay.
So when folks come to me and we're not a good fit to work together, that's where I send them.
Right. And surely they can always reach out to those agencies or organizations and find out what additional resources there are if they live in a different state. So, for sure. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, on one of your social media posts, you did say, and I quote, companies want us to spend money without realizing it. Let's elaborate on that. We spoke about Uber, and so, but let's go a little bit more in depth with that.
Yeah. So there's kind of two different areas that I think about when I say that. And one of it is the
Mhm.
technology piece, like we talked about with Uber and things like
Yeah.
Grubhub and just everything where you can pay with your phone. It's kind of
Yeah.
separating us from the act of paying the money. Like if I was
Mhm.
handing over in like dollar bills the amount of money my Grubhub order cost, it would feel a lot different than just clicking place order.
Yes. Yes.
So there's that side of it. The other side of it is I kind of mentioned earlier, the advertisers and marketers are really good at what they do. And they're
Hmm.
really good at making it seem like this is just a thing that everybody pays for. So you should also just be paying for it. It's just part of life.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of true. Like there's some truth in that, right? Like everybody pays for a cell phone at this point. Everybody pays for Wi-Fi and in their house at this point. But it's just that idea that the marketers are really good at leaning on and like pushing us towards of the peer pressure of like, well, everybody pays for Netflix, everybody pays for Spotify. Just listing it, each marketer for each company is like, well, why aren't you paying for this new car? Why aren't you paying for this car insurance versus that one? Like they're just really good at pressuring us and we're surrounded by it all the time. So when
Hmm.
we go and decide to make a purchase or pay for a service or a subscription, we're not necessarily really thinking through, can I pay this much or is it in alignment with my priorities, right? To pay
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
much for this thing. It's just that it seems so normalized that we're going to spend money on this and that we're going to spend
Right.
this much for this company.
Yeah. If you could give a piece of advice to the world to help people understand and become more accepting of the LGBTQIA community, what would it be? What would you like to say about that?
Oh, that's a tough question. There's so
It's a
much
big
I
one.
wanna say. There's so much. I think if I could only say one thing, it would be that language and culture is evolving. So I
Yeah.
hear from a lot of folks like, "Oh, there's just all these newfangled words, and I don't know about these new pronouns and stuff like that."
Right.
I
Yeah.
would say we have always been here. Identity is similar to mine, and people who have experienced their gender and their sexuality in similar ways to me or other people that live like today and present day, we've
Right. Right.
always existed in the entire
Yeah.
history of humanity in every culture. So to think that just because the language and culture is evolving means
Mhm.
that this is all entirely new identities and made up stuff
Mhm.
is not correct. We've
Right.
always
Yeah.
been here. It's just that we've had to fight for this long to be able
Yeah.
to be this open and to be able to
Yeah.
find the terminology and the words and the community that feels better to us than what we had before.
Yeah. Okay. Is that an ice cream truck in the background?
It is. Can you hear it?
I love it. It brings back great memories. Awesome. Okay, so That's fantastic, and that's very well said. And I think a lot of times people go, "Oh my gosh," they add another acronym to the back of that, or whatever the case may be. But you're right; it's always been there. It's just taking this long to continue to grow and evolve and show that there's more to it. It's not just this much. Now there's more. We're adding to it because we've been here and we want our identity to be known as well. So that's really, really important and key. So, what is it then that surprises you in this day and age? It's 2020. Nothing surprises me anymore really with this pandemic. It's just madness. But what is it that even now that you're still surprises you, and you would hope that there's a shift or a change of mindset with that, with the world and society?
Oh my goodness. Big question. What still surprises me? I relate to what you said about like God, nothing surprises me anymore in 2020. um, I honestly, I'm still surprised sometimes at how just mean people can be. Um,
Oh.
so I posted on Facebook when I first launched my company, and I did an introduction post. Just, hi, I'm River. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a financial planner. Here's a little bit about my services. Come check me out, right?
Mhm.
Whatever the post was. And I paid Facebook to boost the post, right, to kind of get the word out to different people. And I even specified, because Facebook lets you specify. I was like, choose
Right.
LGBT people wherever you have that kind of information in like my
Mhm.
area, send it out. And I had people laugh react that post.
Oh my god.
Like literally, it's on the internet, right? But it's laughing in my face about
Oh.
my identity and my business.
Uh-huh.
And and people were commenting just really transphobic things. Like, I don't even
Oh,
want to repeat it, but just
right.
attacking me for my identity when I'm trying to be like, hey, I have this business that will be useful to my
Yeah.
community. And instead of just being like, that's not for me, or I don't understand that, and continue to
Right.
scroll, people took the time to to laugh in
Oh
my
my
face.
oh my goodness. And wow. That baffles me. And I see that a lot. I see that, and it's not even as like, I don't know, controversial if you want to put it really that way, which I don't think it is, but it's other topics. Like it'll be a really sad post about, I don't know, poverty, something just very even normal, to me. And I would see a laugh reaction on there and I'm thinking, what are they thinking? Really tell me they just accidentally slid over and hit the wrong button, And but if you're seeing that and you're seeing enough of it to really think that that's truly what it is, that's just sad, And really, some people should just leave things, let good be alone, leave it alone, and just
Exactly.
move on and just not do anything. You don't have to react. Nobody wants your opinion. Just move on. If it's not for you, if it's not right for you, or if you don't believe in this, or if you just don't think it's, if maybe you are part of the community, but you don't feel like you need financial planning. All right, move on.
Just keep
There's
scrolling. There's plenty other stuff to look at right now. You don't have to take the time to laugh in my face.
exactly. I actually did a TLC commercial with the TLC channel. I'm not sure if you know her, but Just Jazz. She's on the TLC channel. She's one of the youngest transgender individuals who came out, and I think they've been following her and filming her since she was 7. And so when we met
Oh,
her, she was 18 years old,
yeah.
and so she's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful girl, but born a male, and just the things that she went through her life, and the commercial that we did was actually for bullying. So it was to
Um,
stop bullying. And we spoke about so many different things. They invited many different guests. My daughter was one of them. And there were 8 kids of different ages, and just speaking about their bullying experience. And it's just some of the things that you hear, it's just heartbreaking. And the things that kids will say to each other, online behind the mask of a keyboard, they will just say, very hurtful things, and it's just so sad and so heartbreaking. We filmed for maybe 2 hours, but I mean, I think everybody cried the entire time. We ran out of tissue. It's just so sad to hear the things that are being said. So I can only imagine, the different things that you are seeing or hearing just from a simple Facebook promotion post. So I do apologize for the mean people out there.
thank
I wish people were nicer, but I do believe in karma, so I feel like one day something's going to impact them in a negative way, that they're going to realize how wrong they were in the past, and I hope that that revelation comes sooner than later for them. So I do apologize.
yeah, thank you.
All right, so sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So what questions did I not ask that you felt like was really something that you like to touch on? So any open-ended questions that you would like to kind of speak on right now?
Oh, I would love to talk about just the stress of starting a business.
Okay, let's
Right?
go
This
there.
is the Comfortable podcast, and nothing kills your comfort like trying to start a business.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. So, what are some of the struggles that you've had from starting to where you are now and just promoting and doing the things that you're doing?
Yeah. I actually, now that I've said that, I feel like I shouldn't complain too much. I think it's been relatively easy for me because the service that I'm providing with the target community that I'm looking to serve, like it's really needed. So like I've been able to gain clients and lovely clients. I love working with my clients so much.
Mhm.
Um, but the emotional roller coaster of trying to make money is a lot. And it's interesting to see as a financial planner, I'm helping my clients deal with money and talk about how emotional money is for them. But then,
Yeah,
I hang up the call and I'm like, oh God, am I going to pay rent this month? Like,
right.
I started the business a little over a year ago. I am
Hmm.
now, fortunately, and thanks to hard work, um, making enough money to pay at least my like baseline, like most needed bills, the top of the
Yes.
priority list in my budget.
Yeah.
Um, but the roller coaster from start to now, and even I think will continue forward of like, okay, so this is how much money I know I'm bringing in this month, and then like, oh no, a client, stopped working with me. How am I gonna survive that? Even
Yeah.
when the pandemic hit, several of my clients lost their
Right.
jobs and
Yeah.
had to stop paying me, which is absolutely understandable. But I
Yeah.
lost a group of clients in one fell swoop. And
Wow. Yeah.
that's a chunk of my income. So it's really scary to put myself out there in this way and to have uh, somebody described it to me that I thought was really accurate. It's like if I were to ask for a raise or
Uh-huh.
financial support from a boss when I was an
Yep.
employee, I'm speaking to one person, right? But when I have 25 clients, it's like
Uh-huh.
25 bosses that I have to ask, like if I need a raise or if
Uh-huh.
or like 25 opportunities to be fired. Like it's again and again.
Wow, I never thought of it that way, but that's very real. When you have a very like niche client base and it's a repeat client base that you
Yes,
depend on over and over, that's very difficult. Wow.
yes,
And then, pandemic just kind of like messed it all up for everybody. And it's sad that people are losing their jobs and businesses are closing down and large long-term century-old businesses are filing bankruptcy. Like it's really scary. So what what successes did you find in promoting your business and your firm and would you like to share with everyone who's down a similar journey?
absolutely. So actually getting even more specific about who I serve. So when I started, I said,
Yeah.
the trans and queer community, LGBTQIA community as a whole, but that's an incredibly, incredibly diverse community. People of all different races,
Right.
backgrounds, jobs, careers, locations, like abilities, like just incredibly diverse. Um, and so trying to say that and trying to make my service useful to everybody that could encompass was just
Mhm.
not realistic. And I realized that really quickly. I was like, oh, wow, I'm actually maybe not the best fit for very low income people or very, very high income people or people with different disabilities, like people with different value systems around money that are, very, very different from mine. Like I just might not be the right fit to serve that person.
Mhm.
So I've gotten more specific. So I like to work with people who I keep saying are making more money than ever before, because
Mhm.
in a lot of cases, that means that either they come from a background where their family didn't have a lot of money, so they don't have any kind of education or
Mhm.
preparation for making money now and like what
Right,
that means
right.
and what to do with it.
Yeah.
Or even if they do come from that background, if they didn't make much money for a while and now they're making more, it's like, well, how do I responsibly use this in alignment with
Mhm.
my priorities?
Mhm.
So getting specific about how I can help folks who are in that situation has helped me get more specific about like this is what I can do for
Mhm.
people who fit that description. So the quality of service that I provide for those people is much
Mhm.
higher than it was when I was trying to be useful to everyone.
Right, right. So really narrowing it down and finding where you can be really, really good at, and if it expands from there, great. But if not, at least you finally found your zone. So that's important.
Exactly.
Great, great. So, River, tell me where, if our Comfort Kills followers would like to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I actually would love to provide an offer for your listeners. Um,
Okay.
so if you are one of those people that I'm talking about that's making more money than ever before, but it seems to disappear because you don't have a plan in place to manage it or grow it, I can offer you a 30-minute session to stop letting your money manage you. In this session, we would talk about how you can manage your money and put it on autopilot so that you don't have to think about it and stress about it all the time.
Okay.
Normally, that work would cost about $250, but for listeners of this podcast, I'm offering a 30-minute session for free to the first 5 people that schedule with me. And you can schedule that session by going to beintentionalfinancial.com/podcast.
Okay.
So check it out
Great.
and hope to talk to those people.
Awesome.
First 5 people to schedule.
Great. Thank you so much. That's awesome, guys. You guys have to really take advantage of this because I think that anybody can learn a great deal from this session. So, a good start and a good kick in the butt to kind of get yourself in the right direction. I know it's September 2020 at this point, but why not? Things are different. So, you can start your New Year's resolution now.
There's no time like the present, right? Waiting is only going to have missed opportunities to make your money work for you. So
for sure, live in the moment, be here now. Let's do it.
Yep.
So awesome! Thank you so much, River.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and just your passion behind what you do in the community that you serve.
Thank you so much for having me.